The galaxy had moved on. To them, Earth was silent, dead, and forgotten, a graveyard floating in the void. No signals. No life. No hope. But deep within the shadow of a ruined city, beneath twisted metal and shattered towers, a faint light flickered. It wasn't a flame. It wasn't electricity. It was something older, something hidden, a beacon humanity had buried for its darkest hour. The encrypted signal pulsed into the cold vacuum of space, weak, broken, but alive. Far beyond the wreckage of Earth, in the outer edges of a forgotten star system, a lone ship drifted among the debris of war. Its hull was torn. Engines bled radiation. But its crew, those few who had sworn never to surrender, were still breathing. And when the distress call reached them, they didn't hesitate. "Signal origin confirmed," whispered a voice on the bridge. "Earth, someone's alive down there." The captain's hands clenched into fists. The alien coalition had sworn humanity was gone. They had promised extinction. They had left Earth to burn. But now, someone was calling for war. Years ago, humanity had been promised protection. The Galactic Coalition, a powerful alliance of alien empires, had approached Earth not with weapons, but with open hands and words of friendship. They spoke of shared technology, trade, and peace among the stars. But peace had a price. The aliens demanded resources, rare minerals, energy cores, and human soldiers for joint defense operations. Humanity gave everything they could, believing they were becoming part of something greater. Then came the war. An ancient predator species, known only as the Draxith, returned to the galaxy. They consumed entire worlds, draining oceans, stripping planets of life. Humanity fought bravely alongside the coalition, thousands of ships, millions of lives, but the aliens were losing. And someone had to be sacrificed. The coalition made their choice. Earth. The sky had burned red when the alien fleets left orbit. They didn't even warn the cities below. They just left. Human defense ships fought until their ammunition ran dry. Orbital stations fell like fireballs through the atmosphere. Billions died in the first week. The coalition declared Earth a lost cause. They sealed the star system, broadcasting a simple message. Humanity is gone. The war moves on. But humanity wasn't gone. Not entirely. Beneath the ruins of the once great city of New Geneva, a small group of survivors worked in silence. Engineers, soldiers, and old war scientists, they had built something before the fall. A backup plan. A hidden transmitter, buried deep under miles of concrete and steel. And now, years later, it was finally active again, its signal coded to reach one specific ship. The last warship humanity had left. The Resolute. The Resolute had been humanity's pride, a long-range cruiser designed for deep space exploration and heavy combat. It had survived the betrayal by sheer luck, jumping into hyperspace seconds before the alien blockade sealed Earth away. 4 years, the ship had wandered the outer systems, scavenging, hiding, waiting for a reason to return. Now, it had won. On the bridge, Captain Eric Kaelen stood over the holographic display, watching the faint pulse of Earth's distress call. It wasn't just a signal. It was a declaration. Someone was alive. Someone had something the aliens didn't want found. Back on Earth, the survivors were digging into something dangerous. Buried deep under the surface was an ancient vault, older than humanity itself. Carved into stone walls were markings not of Earth origin. They had discovered proof that another species had visited Earth thousands of years ago, and left behind technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Something so dangerous that the coalition hadn't just abandoned humanity. They had planned to erase them, to keep the secret buried. The Resolute couldn't wait. Captain Kaelen ordered immediate course correction toward the Sol system. The ship's engines roared, tearing through hyperspace, even as damage reports flashed across the consoles. Every crew member knew what this meant. If the coalition discovered they were alive, if the aliens learned they were returning to Earth, they would send fleets to finish what they had started. But Kaelen didn't care. "Prep the weapons," he ordered. "Wake the sleepers." Down in cryogenic storage, the last of humanity's soldiers began to stir. Warriors frozen since the day Earth burned. As the Resolute closed in on Earth's star system, sensors detected movement, alien patrol ships. Small, fast, but deadly. The Coalition had stationed them here, not to guard humanity, but to ensure no one returned. Kaelen gave the order to cut power and drift, hoping to slip past undetected. But as the enemy ships closed in, a quiet thought spread through the crew. What if this wasn't random patrol? What if the aliens already knew about the signal? The Resolute descended into Earth's orbit, engines silent, lights dark. Below, the planet's surface glowed faintly, not with life, but with strange energy readings. From orbit, the crew could see ruins glowing with alien blue light. The vault, it had been opened. Suddenly, the ship's sensors flared red, multiple jump signatures detected. Alien warships, dozens of them, exiting hyperspace. The captain's voice was cold. They know. The Coalition knows someone is alive down there. But before he could give an order, the comms officer turned, pale and shaking. Sir, there's another signal. Not from Earth. From deep space. It's human. Kaelen froze. That's impossible. The signal repeated. This is Commander Vera, of the 7th Fleet. Humanity still fights. Prepare for war. The ruins of Earth whispered with forgotten voices. Wind swept through the hollow frames of shattered towers, carrying the smell of metal and ash. Yet deep beneath the rubble, far below where alien bombardments had scorched the land, humanity moved like ghosts. They were few, barely 1,000 scattered across bunkers and old military facilities, but they were alive. And they had found something the aliens had not wanted anyone to see. The discovery had begun with a collapse. A section of an underground tunnel had caved in, revealing a passage lined not with human steel but with smooth black stone, polished as if carved by machines far older than Earth's oldest civilizations. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls, shifting and pulsing like living veins of light. The survivors stood frozen, unsure whether to run or keep digging. Dr. Ilias Rain, one of the few scientists who had survived the bombardment, knelt to trace the glowing symbols. They were not alien to him, at least not entirely. He had seen fragments of them years ago in Coalition archives, back when Earth still believed the aliens were friends. Files locked under prohibited knowledge. Warnings that spoke of a precursor race, a civilization so advanced it could bend gravity and light as if they were clay. But the Coalition had called it a myth, a ghost story of the stars. Yet here it was. On Earth. Beneath their feet. Far beyond the planet, the Resolute drifted closer, avoiding patrols that prowled the outer system like vultures. Captain Eric Kaelen stood at the bridge, eyes fixed on the faint energy readings from Earth. They were growing stronger by the hour. Whatever the survivors had uncovered, it was waking up. And if it truly was precursor technology, then the galaxy would burn to possess it. The aliens had abandoned Earth for a reason, and now Kaelen knew what it was. They feared humanity might claim a weapon not even they could control. Inside the vault, the air shimmered with static energy. Rain and his team worked to decipher the glowing script, but every attempt to scan it disrupted their instruments. The symbols seemed to shift in response to touch, rearranging themselves into patterns no one could read. Finally, the survivor leader, Commander Vera, the same woman who had sent the transmission to the stars, made a decision. "Open it," she said. Her voice carried no hesitation, though everyone felt the weight of her words. If they opened the vault, there might be no going back. As they worked, the ground trembled, faintly at first, then harder. A deep, resonant hum filled the underground halls. Lights flickered. The black stone walls parted like a blooming flower, revealing a chamber bathed in pale blue light. At its center rested a sphere the size of a man, floating above the floor as if gravity did not exist. The air around it rippled like heat waves, and a faint vibration pressed against their skulls. Not a sound, but a thought. A voice that wasn't a voice. Awakened. At last. Vera froze. Did anyone else hear that? Every head nodded. Before they could react further, Alarms echoed through their hidden base. Perimeter sensors had detected movement. Lots of it. Drones, alien scout machines, sweeping the surface above. The coalition was coming. Not a full fleet, not yet, but the first wave of cleansing forces sent to erase whatever was hidden here. Vera turned to Rain. Can we move it? He shook his head. It's bonded to the room somehow. Any disturbance could destroy it, or trigger something worse. The voice came again, clearer this time. I will move myself. Before anyone could speak, the sphere pulsed, lifting higher. Energy rippled outward, crawling up the vault walls, spreading through the stone like lightning veins. Above ground, buried structures began to glow beneath the cracked earth, faint outlines of towers and circuits that had been invisible for centuries. The planet was waking up. Far above, the Resolute's crew watched in awe as lights flared across Earth's night side, lines and shapes forming patterns across continents like a map of buried machinery. Kaelen turned to his tactical officer. What is that? The officer shook her head. Not human. Not coalition. Something else. Before Kaelen could respond, warning klaxons blared. Multiple warp signatures appeared on the edge of the system. Alien ships, larger, faster, and more heavily armed than the patrols, were arriving. The coalition had detected the activation. They were coming to finish the job. Kaelen made his choice without hesitation. Bring us into low orbit. Prep drop teams. If they're alive down there, we're not leaving them. The Resolute descended into the atmosphere, shields sparking against the thin wisps of high-altitude storms. From the cockpit, the planet below looked broken beyond repair, oceans reduced to black stains, cities nothing but hollow bones. Yet in the darkness, faint lines of blue light carved glowing scars across the land. Something was pulsing beneath the surface, and its heartbeat was growing louder. In the vault, the sphere began to speak, not in words, but in images. Memories of an ancient war, of ships like mountains carving fire across the void. Worlds burning. Species vanishing. The survivors staggered back as the images flooded their minds. Rain struggled to focus, forcing himself to interpret what he saw. It's a weapon, he whispered. Not a bomb, not a gun, something else. A planetary defense system? No, bigger. Much bigger. The voice responded, a whisper across their thoughts. I am not weapon. I am key. Door awaits. Door to what? Vera demanded. The sphere pulsed brighter. Door to survival. Door to vengeance. Suddenly, explosions thundered above. Dust rained from the ceiling as shockwaves rolled through the chamber. Alien drones had breached the upper ruins, firing plasma into anything that moved. Vera barked orders. Soldiers rushed to defensive positions, ancient rifles in their hands, scavenged from the last war. They were outgunned, outnumbered, but they had something the aliens didn't. They had the key. Above the planet, the Resolute engaged the first wave of alien ships. Turrets roared, sending streaks of light across the void, tearing through scout craft, but larger ships loomed behind, weapons glowing with deadly promise. Kaelen's crew fought like wolves, darting between bursts of plasma, striking fast, retreating faster. The goal wasn't victory, it was time. Time for Vera's team to secure whatever they had awakened. Inside the vault, Rain and two engineers connected portable power cells to the base's old defense grid, rerouting energy toward the outer doors. With a scream of metal, ancient blast gates sealed shut, slowing the drone's advance. But it wouldn't hold for long. Vera knew it. We need to move this thing now. The sphere pulsed. I will guide. Follow. A beam of light projected from its surface, pointing toward a side tunnel half buried in rock. The team scrambled toward it as the sphere floated after them, humming louder, brighter. Behind them, explosions tore through the vault as alien drones cut through the last barrier. Plasma bolts streaked down the hall, slamming into walls, sending showers of sparks and molten stone into the air. Soldiers fell, but the survivors pushed on. Far above, the battle in orbit reached its breaking point. The Resolute's shields were failing, engines bleeding fire. Kaelen gritted his teeth. We're staying until they clear the surface. Patch me through to Vera. Static filled the channel, then cleared. Vera's voice came through, calm but strained. We've got something. I don't know what yet, but it's alive. Sending coordinates now. If you can punch a hole, we'll reach the surface. Kaelen nodded grimly. Copy. Hold on, Commander. We're not leaving anyone behind. With one final order, the Resolute unleashed its last salvo, tearing apart the alien frigate blocking its descent path. Engines screamed as the battered ship dropped into the atmosphere, skimming the surface in a desperate maneuver to reach Vera's location. In the tunnels, the survivors broke through into a massive underground hangar, one that had not seen light in thousands of years. Dust covered ancient structures, sleek shapes hidden beneath tattered tarps. The sphere pulsed again, flooding the chamber with pale light. Engines ignited. The tarps burned away. What stood revealed were ships, not alien, not human, but something older. Sleek. Silent. Waiting. The survivors stood frozen, barely able to breathe. The sphere's voice whispered one final time. Take them. Survive. Then, strike back. Outside, alien reinforcements broke through the clouds. The battle for Earth had begun. And humanity had just found its first weapon of hope. The stars above Earth burned with fire and wreckage. The Resolute twisted through debris fields and plasma bursts, its hull glowing red from near misses. Inside, alarms screamed with each hit that struck the shields. But Captain Kaelen did not retreat. He had waited too long for this moment. Humanity had been silent for years, but now their roar was echoing through the void. Below, in the underground hangar, the survivors moved quickly under the pale light of the strange floating sphere. The ancient ships it had awakened were unlike anything they had seen. Sleek hulls shimmered with a metallic sheen that shifted colors as they looked at it, almost as if alive. No seams, no rivets, no signs of wear, only perfect, seamless construction, as though they had been grown instead of built. Commander Vera approached the largest one, a vessel shaped like a crescent moon. The surface pulsed faintly as she touched it, sending a warm vibration through her glove. The ship responded, lowering a ramp that unfolded silently. A faint light pulsed from within, waiting. Vera exhaled slowly, then turned to her team. Load everything we can carry. Weapons, supplies, data cores. We don't know if we'll get another chance. Dr. Rain studied the floating sphere as soldiers hurried past, dragging equipment and cases toward the ships. You said you were a key, he murmured. A key to what? The sphere pulsed with light, faint waves rippling across its surface. Not to what? To who? Before Rain could ask what that meant, the ground shook violently. A massive shockwave rolled through the cavern, knocking several people to their knees. Overhead, dust rained down from cracks forming in the ceiling. Vera shouted for everyone to move faster, her voice barely audible over the roar of collapsing stone. Above the planet, alien warships swarmed like predators around the Resolute, forcing Kaelen to push the ship to its limits. His gunners fired relentlessly, cutting down drones and fighter craft, but larger cruisers were closing in. Every move bought seconds Vera needed to escape, but the cost in damage was severe. Shields down to 30%, the tactical officer shouted. Hull breaches in decks 3 and 4. Kaelen's gaze never left the view screen. Hold course. If we fall, we make sure they bleed with us. Back underground, the first of the ancient ships roared to life, engines glowing with strange blue light. The survivors climbed aboard, guided by holographic symbols that shifted into recognizable controls as they approached. It was as though the ships were learning from them, adapting to their thoughts. Vera stood at the controls of the crescent ship, feeling a strange connection through the interface. Not buttons, not levers, but surfaces that pulsed faintly beneath her fingertips. The ship felt alive, responding not to commands, but to intent. She closed her eyes, imagining flight, and the ship answered, hovering silently a meter off the hangar floor. The sphere floated ahead, its glow intensifying. Follow. Time ends. The hangar wall cracked open as ancient mechanisms stirred to life, revealing a vertical shaft that stretched toward the surface. Light poured down from above, daylight, blinding and harsh against the darkness of the cavern. But before the ships could ascend, movement erupted at the far end of the chamber. Drones poured through the breach, swarming like metallic insects, their weapons glowing hot. Plasma fire streaked across the hangar, cutting down the first line of defenders. Soldiers returned fire, but their rifles were weak against the drone's energy shields. Vera gritted her teeth and willed the crescent ship forward. Turrets emerged from its smooth hull, unfolding like petals. Without a sound, they fired streams of blue-white light, slicing through the incoming swarm. Drones exploded mid-flight, scattering fragments across the floor. The ancient ship was not just alive, it was a predator. One by one, the other vessels rose into the air, their weapons firing in unison. The survivors cheered, their fear replaced with something sharper, vengeance. The first of the ships shot upward through the shaft, followed by the others. The cavern trembled under the force of their engines. Vera's vessel climbed last, the floating sphere keeping close as if tethered by invisible threads. Above ground, the exit opened into a battlefield. The ruins of Earth burned as alien strike teams swept through the craters and rubble. But the ancient ships moved like shadows, darting through wreckage and unleashing firepower unlike anything the enemy had seen. Drones fell by the dozens, reduced to molten shards in the dirt. From orbit, Kaelen watched the spectacle unfold, his crew speechless. What are those ships?" one whispered. Kaelen didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the scanners, watching as the survivors' vessels rose from the surface and streaked toward the Resolute. "Open docking bay doors," he ordered. "Bring them in." The alien cruisers in orbit saw the same thing. Sensors flared with confusion, ships of unknown origin, rising from a world long thought dead. Commands rippled across their comms to intercept, but the ancient craft were too fast, weaving through plasma fire with impossible agility. One darted past an enemy frigate and fired a single shot. The frigate's shields collapsed instantly, and its hull split down the middle, tearing apart in a silent explosion that cast debris across the void. Kaelen's crew erupted in cheers. Humanity had been outgunned for years. But not anymore. As the survivors docked, the floating sphere hovered above the Resolute, pulsing brighter than ever. Vera stepped out of her ship, her face grim but determined. "We've got more than survivors," she said. "We've got their fear now." Kaelen studied her. "What is that thing?" He nodded toward the sphere. Rain answered, his voice trembling. "A key. And I think it's not done yet." Before anyone could ask what he meant, sensors blared again. More alien warships were entering the system. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The coalition was not about to let humanity rise from the ashes. Kaelen looked at Vera. "Can your ships fight?" Vera gave a thin, cold smile. They were built for nothing else. Moments later, the Resolute and the newly awakened fleet surged toward the edge of the system, weapons blazing. Alien cruisers closed in from all sides, their guns bright against the black of space. But humanity no longer fought alone. The ancient ships moved like predators, striking faster than scanners could track, shredding enemy formations with devastating precision. Whole squadrons vanished in bursts of blue light, leaving glowing wreckage tumbling through the void. For the first time since Earth's fall, the coalition was losing. Kaelen gave the order to push forward, to drive a hole through the blockade. Vera's ship led the charge, carving a path of destruction through enemy lines. The Resolute followed close behind, engines screaming, shields flaring against plasma blasts. But the enemy was relentless, calling in reinforcements from every corner of the sector. Rain stood by the sphere, feeling its pulsing vibrations growing stronger. It was almost like a heartbeat, but faster, sharper, building toward something. "It's doing something," he murmured. The sphere's light flared across the bridge, projecting a holographic map of the galaxy, dozens of points glowing faintly. "Others wait," it whispered. "Others sleep. Find them. Unite. Strike back." Kaelen stared at the map. "You're saying There are more of these ships? More than ships, the sphere replied. An armory of a fallen war. Yours to claim. The hologram shifted, highlighting one particular star system far beyond the coalition's borders. The sphere pulsed brighter, almost urgent. Go. Before they erase the path. Kaelen turned to Vera. Looks like our war just got bigger. Vera's eyes were hard. Good. Let's give them a reason to fear the dark. The Resolute's engines flared, ancient ships escorting it as it punched through the last line of alien cruisers. Behind them, Earth burned under the fury of orbital fire. But ahead lay something greater, a promise, a weapon, a future. The first strike had been made. The galaxy had taken notice. And humanity was just getting started. The alien fleet regrouped. Debris from the battle still floated like glowing shards around Earth's orbit, casting faint reflections across the void. But in the silence between the wreckage, tension grew like a storm waiting to break. Humanity had struck its first blow, but victory had come at a cost. The Resolute limped through space, hull scorched, engines bleeding radiation, while the newly awakened ships escorted it toward the edge of the system. Inside the bridge, Captain Kaelen studied the holographic galaxy map projected by the floating sphere. Dozens of points still glowed faintly, other caches of precursor ships, hidden across distant star systems. Each one could hold more weapons, more technology, more hope. Yet the nearest was far beyond coalition territory, deep inside hostile space. Getting there would mean crossing sectors swarming with alien patrols, spies, and worse, traitors. Commander Vera stood near the forward viewport, eyes fixed on the stars. They won't take this lightly, she said quietly. The coalition just saw what we can do. They'll be hunting us harder than ever. Kaelen didn't reply. He was thinking of something worse than alien fleets, whispers of betrayal. Before Earth had fallen, some humans had made deals with alien commanders, trading information and access to resources in exchange for passage off-world. No one knew how many had escaped, or where they had gone. But if even one of them had survived in coalition territory, they might have warned the aliens of what was hidden on Earth. Dr. Rain was the first to speak what everyone feared. Someone told them. That's why they came so fast. They didn't just sense the vault opening. They knew it was there. Kaelen turned to Vera. You've been down there for years. Did you see anyone? Anyone who wasn't supposed to be alive? Her jaw tightened. We had sightings. Ships skimming the atmosphere months ago. Never made contact. Could have been scavengers. Could have been worse. The bridge fell silent. No one wanted to say the word. Traitors. Humans who had chosen survival over loyalty. Humans who had left the rest to burn. The sphere pulsed suddenly, sending ripples of blue light across the room. Shadows walk in your ranks, it whispered into their minds. Seek the truth, or fall from within. Kaelen's gaze darkened. So it's true. Someone is feeding them our movements. Then we find out who, Vera said. Her voice was cold, sharp. And we cut them out. Hours later, in the lower decks of the Resolute, the crew gathered in tense clusters, whispering rumors of spies and traitors. Paranoia spread like fire. Every officer, every technician, every survivor from Earth now faced the same question. Who could be trusted? Kaelen ordered all communication relays sealed, all outgoing signals blocked. Only the ship's own encrypted channel could transmit. Patrols doubled. Security checkpoints locked down access to critical sections. But still, the tension did not fade. A single saboteur could doom them all. In the med bay, Rain examined fragments salvaged from the ancient vault, slivers of alloy that shifted colors under the light, reacting to touch as if alive. This technology isn't just advanced, he muttered to himself. It's aware. It remembers things. Records impressions. He frowned, glancing toward the sphere hovering nearby. It could probably tell us who triggered the vault, and who tried to stop it. The sphere's light pulsed softly, as if listening. Can you? Rain asked, almost whispering. Can you show us who betrayed us? The sphere hesitated. Then images flickered across its surface, brief flashes of movement, shapes of figures cloaked in shadows, faces half-lit by faint blue glow. One of them wore a coalition insignia. Another wore a human combat suit, one designed before the fall. The image dissolved before Rain could see more. Before he could ask again, alarms erupted across the ship. Not from outside, but from within. Engineering decks. Explosions tore through the corridors, sending fire and smoke through the lower levels. Emergency bulkheads sealed, trapping crew in the flames. Kaelen's voice boomed across the comms. All units, contain the breach. Search for the saboteur. Vera and her soldiers moved quickly, sweeping decks with rifles raised. But the ship's corridors twisted with smoke and shadows, every corner a potential ambush. Somewhere in the chaos, the traitor was moving, planting charges, cutting through security locks. Rain stayed by the sphere, watching its glow shift rapidly, almost frantic. You see them, don't you? He whispered. Show us where. The sphere pulsed once. Then a projection spread across the floor, an overhead map of the ship. A single red light pulsed near the aft section. Vera's team moved instantly, hunting the signal. They found the saboteur in the auxiliary hangar, a human soldier, his visor cracked, eyes cold with something beyond fear. He carried an alien transmitter strapped to his armor, its signal pulsing faintly as he armed the last of his charges. Vera raised her weapon. Drop it. Now. The man gave a faint, bitter smile. You don't get it, do you? You think this is about survival. It's not. It's about mercy. The coalition doesn't want you alive. And you don't want to know why. Before she could fire, he triggered the device. The blast tore through the hangar, hurling soldiers across the floor. The traitor vanished in the explosion, but not before his final words echoed through the smoke. They're not afraid of your ships. They're afraid of what's coming for all of us. The Resolute limped onward, emergency crews sealing the damaged sections. But the words of the traitor lingered like poison. What had he meant? What could make the coalition fear more than humanity's return? That night, as the ship drifted toward the coordinates revealed by the sphere, Kaelen stood alone at the viewport. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, cold and silent. But somewhere beyond them, something was waiting, something worse than betrayal. The sphere pulsed softly beside him. Your war begins. But the true enemy does not know you yet. Kaelen turned toward it. Then they'll learn soon enough. The sphere's glow dimmed, as though considering his words. Yes. But not all lessons are survived. Far behind, the wreckage of Earth spun in silence, burning faintly where the coalition's bombardment still smoldered. Ahead, the path grew darker, twisting toward secrets no one on the Resolute truly understood. And somewhere in the void, beyond the coalition's borders, beyond the map of known space, something vast began to stir. The darkness of deep space pressed against the Resolute's hull as it slipped through the uncharted sector, following the coordinates the ancient sphere had revealed. No star maps covered this region. No beacons marked the way. It was empty, silent, and cold, yet the crew could feel something watching. Kaelen stood at the command deck, staring at the projection of their path. The galaxy stretched out like an ocean of light, but this part was different. Here, stars seemed wrong. Some were dimmed as if drained of life, others pulsed faintly like dying embers. The sphere floated beside him, casting its pale blue glow across the room. Commander Vera approached, arms folded. We've crossed into the null corridor. Coalition ships don't patrol this far, too close to whatever did this. Whatever did this? Kaelen repeated, glancing at her. Vera hesitated. No one knows. Legends say something swept through these systems centuries ago. Whole colonies vanished. No survivors. The coalition declared the region off-limits. They said it was unstable space. Kaelen turned back to the viewport. Unstable space doesn't leave stars looking like that. In the lower decks, Dr. Rain worked feverishly over the fragments from the ancient vault. The alloys shimmered under his instruments, shifting colors as if alive. They pulsed faintly now, faster than before, like a heartbeat sensing danger. "This isn't just technology," he muttered. "It's reacting to something out there." The lights flickered overhead. Then the ship shuddered, not from impact, but from a ripple in space itself. Gravity twisted for a heartbeat. Every metal surface groaned. Kaelen's voice came over comms. "All decks, status report." Rain steadied himself, eyes locked on the readings. "Captain, it wasn't a collision. It was a wave. Like something passing through reality itself." Moments later, the forward sensors picked up faint energy trails, ancient, fractured, but still there. They led toward a distant object, barely visible through the haze of spatial distortion. As the Resolute approached, the crew saw it, a massive station drifting in the void. Its design was alien, yet not like anything from the Coalition. The structure was broken, torn apart by forces beyond weapons, yet fragments still hummed with faint light. Vera's voice was low, almost reverent. "Precursor tech. It has to be." Kaelen nodded slowly. "Prepare a landing team. We're going inside." The boarding party crossed into the ruined station, weapons drawn. The corridors were vast and silent, lined with metal that seemed to flow like frozen liquid. Strange symbols pulsed faintly along the walls, patterns shifting when touched, as if whispering forgotten commands. Rain studied the markings with wide eyes. "This place, it's not dead. It's sleeping." As they moved deeper, they found a central chamber, a massive dome filled with broken machines. At its center, a crystalline console glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the sphere back on the ship. Kaelen approached it cautiously. "Can you wake it?" Rain nodded, fingers tracing the patterns. The console flared to life, projecting a vast star map into the air. But the map didn't just show the galaxy, it showed scars across it, black voids spreading like cracks in glass. Then a voice, not the spheres, echoed through the chamber. Cold. Ancient. Warning. They are coming. Not for you. Not for them. For everything. The projection shifted, showing a silhouette emerging from the void. Vast. Shifting. Unknowable. Vera swallowed. What is that?" "The enemy that ended us," the voice replied. "The enemy that learns, consumes, evolves. The enemy that leaves nothing living in its wake." The image dissolved. The console powered down, its last flicker fading into darkness. Back aboard the Resolute, Kaelen stood in silence, staring at the recording of the vision. The crew waited for his command, but none came for a long while. Finally, he spoke. "We're not just fighting for revenge anymore." Rain nodded grimly. "No. We're fighting to stop that from reaching the galaxy." But as the crew absorbed the revelation, the sensors triggered an alert. Multiple contacts. Fast. Closing in. Coalition ships. And not just patrols. A full strike fleet. In the shadows of deep space, the trap had been set. The betrayal aboard the Resolute had done its work, the Coalition knew where they were going. And now, at the edge of an ancient graveyard, with the knowledge of something worse approaching, humanity stood cornered. Kaelen tightened his grip on the command rail. "Bring weapons online. They want to stop us here? Then they'll bleed for every meter of vacuum." But as the first Coalition ships emerged from the void, the sphere pulsed urgently, sending a thought into Kaelen's mind. "You cannot win this fight. Flee. Or be erased." Kaelen looked at the stars ahead, toward the deeper void where the true threat waited, and then back at the enemy fleet. His jaw clenched. "Not today," he muttered. "Not without a fight." The order was given. The battle began. Stars burned like white-hot needles across the void as the Coalition fleet closed in on the Resolute. Sleek warships, bristling with weapons, cut through the darkness in perfect formation. Their numbers dwarfed the last human vessel, outgunning it 10-1. Yet Kaelen stood firm on the command deck, eyes cold, voice steady. Shields to maximum. Lock all weapons. We hold the line. Vera frowned, gripping the console. Holding the line means suicide. We can't win a head-on engagement. Kaelen didn't look at her. Then we make sure they don't win either. The first salvo struck like thunder. Plasma lances tore across space, slamming into the Resolute shields, flaring bright as armor buckled. The deck shuddered under Kaelen's boots. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Return fire. Human cannons roared, tearing through the nearest enemy frigate. Its hull split like glass, venting fire and crew into the void. But for every ship they damaged, 3 more closed in. On the lower deck, Rain struggled to stabilize the sphere. Its pulses had become frantic, flooding the ship with strange energy surges. "It's trying to interface with our weapon systems," he shouted over comms. Kaelen responded instantly, "Let it. If it has something better than what we've got, now's the time to share." A burst of light rippled through the ship as the sphere fused with the core. Human weapons changed, power readings spiking far beyond design limits. "Target the lead cruiser," Kaelen ordered. The beam ripped across space, bending around shields, phasing through hull plating as though the laws of physics bent in its path. The Coalition cruiser detonated from within, a silent explosion of light and fire scattering debris like ash. The crew stared in awe. What was that?" Vera whispered. Rain's voice came, low and grim. "Not human tech. And not ours to control for long." But as hope flickered, a chilling transmission broke across their comms. Coalition command, cold and merciless. "Human vessel, Resolute. You have stolen technology forbidden to your kind. Surrender it now, and your deaths will be swift." Kaelen stood silent, watching enemy ships regroup. Vera growled. "They knew about the precursor vault. That's why they left us to die. They feared we'd find it." Kaelen nodded once. "And now they'll burn a galaxy to keep it hidden." The Resolute dove through enemy lines, weaving between plasma storms, its new weapons tearing through ship after ship. But for every victory, the odds grew worse. Then, another ripple tore through space. Not from the sphere. Not from the Coalition. From beyond. Sensors flared with impossible readings. Space itself distorted ahead of them. And then, they saw it. A shape. Colossal. Shifting. A living shadow larger than moons, blotting out stars as it emerged from the void. The Coalition fleet faltered. For the first time, their formations broke. Fear rippled through their comms. The ancient enemy had arrived. The creature's form was indescribable. Part machine, part flesh, part something older. It moved without engines, without heat, without anything the laws of nature could explain. And it was heading straight for them. One shot. Just one. Kaelen stood frozen for a heartbeat, then turned to his crew. "Forget the Coalition. Forget the war. If that thing reaches the core worlds, everything dies." Vera's jaw tightened. "Then what do we do?" Kaelen glanced at the sphere, now glowing brighter than ever. "We go deeper. Find the weapon the precursors left behind. Or die trying." The Resolute plunged into the anomaly, past the shattered station, vanishing into uncharted darkness, while behind them, the first battle of a much greater war had begun. The Coalition ships opened fire on the creature, their beams cutting across its surface, only to vanish like sparks in a storm. The thing retaliated. Entire cruisers vanished into black folds of nothingness. Humanity had just witnessed the opening move of extinction. The Resolute emerged from the anomaly into a dead sector of space, a void darker than night, where stars refused to shine. The crew stood silent as scanners revealed a massive structure ahead, drifting like a tomb. It was not a ship. It was a fortress, ancient and fractured, carved from materials unknown to human science. Kaelen leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Precursor origin confirmed?" Rain's hands trembled over the console. "Confirmed. And Captain, it's still alive." The fortress pulsed faintly, like a heart barely beating. Vast rings rotated slowly around its core, emanating ghostly light that cast long shadows across the Resolute. They docked at a shattered hangar, lights flickering weakly as the gravity inside shifted and failed. Vera led the advance team, weapons ready, as the doors opened to reveal a hallway carved with symbols that seemed to shift when viewed from the corner of the eye. "This place, it's not dead," she whispered. "No," Kaelen replied softly, stepping forward. "It's waiting." The deeper they went, the stranger it became. The walls pulsed with faint energy, like veins beneath skin. Strange echoes of voices, not quite words, filled the air. At the core of the fortress, they found a chamber unlike anything they had ever seen. Floating in its center was a weapon, or what looked like one. A long crystalline construct, suspended in shimmering light, radiating a presence that felt almost aware. Rain scanned it, his voice unsteady. "Captain, this isn't just a weapon. It's a key, and it's locked." Before Kaelen could speak, the fortress itself responded. Holographic light coalesced into a humanoid figure, tall, faceless, and ancient beyond measure. It spoke without sound, a voice that bypassed language and drilled straight into their minds. "Who awakens the Keeper?" Kaelen stepped forward, gripping his sidearm though he knew it wouldn't matter. "Humanity. We were left to die. But we won't. Not again." The figure tilted its head. "Your kind was forbidden to return. Yet you carry the catalyst. You may claim the Aegis, if you endure the trial." The chamber changed instantly. Walls melted into endless black void. The crew found themselves standing on a platform suspended in nothingness. And then, the darkness moved. Creatures emerged. Not the alien enemy they knew, but constructs of light and shadow, replicas of humanity's greatest fears and failures. Battles long lost. Cities consumed by fire. Families left behind. "It's not a fight," Vera whispered, heart pounding. "It's a test." Kaelen clenched his jaw. "Then we pass. Or humanity ends here." They fought, not with weapons alone, but with willpower. Every phantom was a reflection of human despair, betrayal, guilt, extinction. Each blow they struck was an act of defiance, each step forward a refusal to surrender. When the final shadow fell, the void shattered, revealing the crystalline weapon once more. The holographic figure nodded slowly. "You have endured. You may claim the Aegis." The crystal descended toward Kaelen. As his hand closed around it, energy surged through the chamber, through him, through the Resolute. The Keeper's final words echoed like a prophecy. "The enemy you face is not of this cycle. It devours not worlds, but time. Only the Aegis can unmake it. But know this, once fired, it cannot be used again." Back aboard the Resolute, alarms blared. Vera rushed to the bridge. "Captain, the alien creature. It's coming. And the Coalition fleet, what's left of it, is leading it straight toward the core worlds." Kaelen stood in the center of the deck, the Aegis glowing in his grasp. "One shot. One chance to end it. Or everything we fought for, everything humanity still is, burns with the stars." The Resolute stood at the edge of the warzone, its battered hull glowing faintly from the energy of the Aegis. Beyond it, the alien monstrosity loomed, an abomination of metal, flesh, and shifting geometry, larger than a dozen cities, moving like a living black hole. It consumed light, bending space around its form, drawing in entire ships with a whisper of gravity. The remnants of the alien Coalition fleet darted around it, not attacking, guiding it toward the core worlds. Betrayal layered upon betrayal, the final insult to humanity's survival. Kaelen stood on the bridge, the crystal weapon resting in his grip, glowing with dangerous brilliance. "Captain," Rain said, voice trembling as the scanners pulsed red. "If we miss, there won't be a second shot." Kaelen didn't answer. He stared at the monstrosity, eyes fixed, as if willing himself to see its weakness. The Keeper's words echoed in his mind. Once fired, it cannot be used again. Humanity's one chance at vengeance and survival. Vera leaned closer. Captain, the coalition ships. They're transmitting something to the creature. Not commands, coordinates. They're using their own signal to lure it straight to inhabited worlds. Kaelen's jaw tightened. Then we cut off the signal. We can't, Rain replied, shaking his head. They've locked it to a quantum relay. Destroying their ships won't stop it. The monster, it's already feeding. The alien creature moved faster, its surface shimmering with strange distortions, like fractured mirrors rippling across its skin. Each pulse of its core dragged the coalition fleet closer to its maw, yet they did not flee. They had chosen their path. Humanity's extinction was their insurance of survival. Kaelen stepped toward the forward glass of the bridge, the Aegis pulsing in his hands. He spoke softly, yet every crew member heard him. Target the core. Ignore everything else. The Resolute charged forward, engines screaming as they pushed into the gravity well of the alien monstrosity. Debris from destroyed coalition ships spun past, glowing red-hot from the creature's pull. Plasma fire raked across the Resolute's shields, tearing them down to a fragile shimmer. The alien beast began to react. Tendrils of metallic flesh extending outward like spears, lashing at the Resolute in blinding arcs of light. Vera's hands flew over the controls, rolling the ship between strikes that could have sliced it in two. Range to fire? Kaelen demanded. Not yet. Rain shouted. The core is unstable, shielded by some kind of temporal barrier. We're reading. Wait. Captain, it's feeding on time itself. Kaelen's knuckles whitened around the Aegis. Then we'll rip time apart. The Resolute dove closer, alarms shrieking as hull plating peeled under the beast's gravitational pull. The lights dimmed, flickering with each surge of energy from the Aegis. Crew members gritted their teeth as they felt space distort around them, moments stretching and snapping like broken wires. The creature sensed the danger now. A piercing, mind-rending shriek echoed across comms, not sound, but thought, a voice of hunger and rage. It struck again, tearing across the Resolute's flank, leaving molten scars. Now! Kaelen roared. Rain routed full power to the weapon. The Aegis rose from Kaelen's hands, floating before him, its crystalline shape twisting and unfolding like a living star. Light gathered at its core, not heat, not fire, but a brilliance that seemed to erase reality itself. The alien beast surged forward, tendrils coiling to strike, ready to tear the Resolute apart before the weapon could fire. Kaelen whispered, voice steady and cold. For Earth. For everyone you left behind. The Aegis fired. A single beam of white-gold light erupted, not into space, but through it, cutting through layers of reality like glass. It pierced the alien monster's core, and for a fraction of a second, time itself froze. The monstrosity convulsed, warping violently as light poured through its body, shattering its form from within. Space rippled outward like a broken mirror, swallowing the beast, the remaining coalition ships, and the stars themselves in a blinding flash. Silence. When it cleared, the creature was gone. The coalition fleet, gone. But so too was a massive swath of the galaxy, erased in a perfect sphere of empty void. The Aegis had burned itself out, falling back into Kaelen's hands as nothing more than a dead crystal. The Resolute limped toward the core worlds. Survivors watched from shattered stations and cities as the ship returned, a ghost of Earth's vengeance, carrying the story of humanity's final strike. Vera looked at Kaelen, her voice barely a whisper. We won. But what now? Kaelen stared out into the hollow void where stars had once burned. Now, we rebuild. And we remember what we can do when the galaxy leaves us for dead. The Resolute turned toward distant stars, toward new worlds, toward the next chapter of humanity's defiance.